Hello, everyone. My name is Cohort, and today I'm very, very excited and honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Michelle Valle. Michelle is a co-founder of Stardust. The Stardust EdTech platform empowers a global community of innovators by providing the necessary technical skills to get hired and make a meaningful impact on humanity's progression to the stars. Michelle received her bachelor's degree from the University of North Texas in biomedical engineering, and she has now transferred her expertise to combine it with her love for space exploration. Previously, Michelle was a process development associate at Regeneron and was the conference co-chair for NewSpace, which is how we met. I remember when I first met Michelle at the NewSpace conference, I was blown away by both her passion and her enthusiasm for aerospace, and I'm really, really excited to learn about her journey and how she navigated this space as a young professional from a biology-based background. Personally, myself, I'm a huge biomedical engineering fan, as that's my major as well, and so I'm really curious how Michelle was able to kind of transform her experiences and connect it with her love for space as well. So thank you so much for Michelle for taking your time to do this interview. I'm very, very excited to learn about your journey, and I'm always inspired by the work you're doing today. So thank you for taking your time to inspire the next generation of aerospace leaders today.
Well, thank you so much, Gitika, for having me and hosting me under your phenomenal nonprofit, Ignited Thinkers. It really is awesome to be able to know somebody like you that has this collective mission to help really fuel the next generation of leaders and also just thinkers in the aerospace industry. So it's exciting.
Thank you so much. That means so much coming from you. I remember like the different initiatives you're part of. Every time I read something, you're always advocating or doing something in the space sector to make your mark and to inspire the next generation. So truly, it's an honor speaking with you today. And I want to start off with the question of your typical day, which I know is like an awful question to start with because I'm sure you never have a typical day and you're always doing different things. You're part of different initiatives. But I want to start off by generally asking you, how do you generally like to structure your day, and how does a typical day generally look like for you?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And I think I learned a lot of this just through trial and error through school and then in the corporate setting. But yeah, transitioning into full-fledged entrepreneurship, you kind of just have to find your flow. You're right. There's a lot of changes, a lot of ambiguity, but that consistency remaining to have a few things that you routinely do every single day has really helped me a lot. So a typical day for me looks like I wake up, and depending on how tired I am and how much I have set forward in front of me for that day, I either drink coffee or tea. And then sometimes I read, sometimes I write, but I always, always, always do my affirmations and meditation. It's just a way to celebrate my success. I had an advisor once who gave me this really, really great tool. And it's been life-changing for me to celebrate my successes because sometimes your glasses can get foggy when you're trying to solve challenging problems, and it's just like this kind of calibration mechanism to use every single day.
I'm
And
so
then
glad.
I get started for my day, and my whole day is full of like a prioritization list and then meetings, and I just go down it and I chug through it. But yeah, starting off the day like that, that's the most meaningful way for me.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're able to take that time to, before your busy day starts, to have that moment of just taking care of yourself, making sure that you realize all that you are doing and will do in the future. I think that just moment of reflection is so important and something that generally
Yeah.
we tend to forget, especially as young professionals. We have so much, the world is constantly moving around us. And so just taking that step back before the day really begins and making sure that you're in touch with yourself, I think is so important, and I'm glad you're doing that. And in your introduction, I was mentioning your work with Stardust, and this is a very new endeavor. And so I'm really excited to kind of catch you in your initial phases of, Stardust. Could you share a little bit more about Stardust and the inspiration behind you co-founding it, as well as kind of what your future vision is for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So the inspiration behind Stardust is really simple. The space industry has this need to hire folks to solve these challenging problems. And because we're in this phase of needing this next generation of talent to support the initiatives that we already have slated, you really have to look at it on how to inspire people, and making it a really, really inclusive space. And I'll talk about that if it comes up a little bit later. That's been a huge inspiration behind Stardust, is inclusivity in the space industry, and really, really helping inspire people based on their current skills, their passions, and showing that there is a place for you in space. And that's what we do. We are focused on the person first and foremost, and just using space as this really beautiful unifying vector between different people. So, yeah.
And what's kind of your future, or what are like the specific initiatives that your organization is doing in order to bridge that gap? And also, kind of what's your future vision for what the organization will accomplish? And before even you get to that question, I do want to commend you on the work that Stardust is doing because it's so critical. The space sector is rapidly increasing. I mean, there's so many new companies forming every week. I feel like so many new jobs opening up. A few weeks ago, I was hearing how Blue Origin has around like 200 open engineering positions, and my mind was just like, wow,
Right.
so many
Mhm.
jobs, but not enough shoes, not enough people to fill in those, those open positions, and that's a problem. If we want to continue expanding the industry, we need to be able to fill those roles and get people to feel confident with their skill sets to transition into the space sector if they're not already into the space industry. So I think that's an incredibly important, thing that we need to do as we're expanding the industry. But I'm curious to learn a little bit more about like kind of the mechanisms of Stardust as well as some of the specific initiatives you are doing.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. You really touched on some great points. Our main focus at the initial stages is to focus on folks with non-traditional backgrounds, right? And the way we look at it is we have to see them, focus on the individual, and show them that they can see themselves in this space. And that's really about providing a supportive ecosystem. So what we do and what we're aiming to do with our first pilot program is to build a technical training curriculum to help people transition their passions and skills into the space industry. So our pilot program is with formerly incarcerated women, and it's a really, really empowering initiative. And not only gives a second chance, it helps these women build a career path in the space industry. And that alone, helping one individual is really more than I could ever wish for. So I'm very excited about that for our pilot program, and what it'll do for the space industry is not only provide talent and different backgrounds to solve problems differently, it also shows that the space industry is really, really inclusive. That's what the space industry did for me. I mean, I'm a bioengineer by training, but I'm here in the space industry. And so that just shows how supportive the industry really, really, truly is.
Yeah, and I think that's so incredible that your organization is focused on helping communities who are, not usually represented in the space sector or really just any industry. To be completely honest, I don't see a lot of incarcerated women getting the opportunity to have a second chance at any career. And the fact that Stardust is focused on uplifting these women as well as other underrepresented groups in the space sector and STEM field, I think is absolutely amazing, and so critical and necessary. They all bring in different ideas, different perspectives, different backgrounds, and
Right.
ideas to the table that are so important if we want to come up and develop innovative solutions for space exploration. So I think that's amazing that Stardust is doing that and taking that so seriously. There are not a lot of organizations focused on that. So I hope the pilot program is very successful and you're able to kind of implement the same strategy towards other underrepresented groups as well. And
Thank you so much. Mhm.
Yeah, and in your background, at the end, you mentioned a really good point about how space is so interdisciplinary, and even with your own major in biomedical engineering, you were accepted in the space sector. I love to think of space as its own little world where you're going to need every career in the real world. You're going to need just in the space industry, whether it be an artist, someone who's interested in law, economics, fashion, design, anything. You're going to need that in the space sector to some capacity. And so I'm curious to learn specifically about your background in biomedical engineering and how you're able to use your degree, use your skill sets to transition into helping you be very successful in the space industry.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and you're exactly right. Somebody coined the phrase. It wasn't me, but I love it so much, so I'll say it. And it's every single business in the world, worldwide, will be a space business, or can be. It's just a matter of time and resources and building that system and ecosystem for everybody to be supported. And that mindset of being a bioengineer, my background has always been looking at life, but how living things and organisms grow. Uh, you really understand systems, and that translates very, very well in any engineering realm. And that is what I've learned. I can problem solve and critically think and analyze based off of my technical training. And above the technical training, I'm just curious. I've always asked questions. So the bio part of it got me started. It makes me excited. I love living things and how fascinating these systems have evolved over time to become what they are. And that definitely plays a part on how I attack and solve problems. But overall, what I'm doing now with Stardust alongside Kim Masharia is really another problem set. It's a combination of many problems to solve, but it's that simple. It's another problem. I have the critical and analytical skills to spearhead this, and that's what I'd say is the most useful with my technical training.
Yeah, I love that phrase. I can't believe I haven't heard of it before of every business is a space business. And if you think about it, it's so true. I mean, whether it be trying to understand the climate crises, to understanding how we can make healthcare more equitable, to
Yeah.
developing innovative technology that can, make water, clean water more accessible or enable us to connect with people from across the world, all of that is possible through space and the space industry. And so I love that term. And I think it perfectly encapsulates why we need every single major. And even specifically with biomedical engineering, you're so right that the thought process, the critical thinking, the problem solving, the way of approaching a problem is very unique for biomedical engineers. And when you take that tool, you take that skill set and apply it to other problems, it makes you approach the problem in a different angle compared to an aeronautical engineer or someone who majored in law and policy. You approach a problem through different angles, and I think that's what makes space so beautiful is because you need all these different perspectives to really tackle one big problem that we don't know how to even start solving. So I think that's incredible that you're able to really have the confidence to come in with almost a very unconventional degree in aerospace and use that to your advantage and really, get your foot in the door in the space sector. So that kind of leads me to my next question of how did you get your foot in the door? As a biomedical engineer, I'm majoring in that myself. I know it's always a question. I've met a few students who are majoring in psychology, biology, chemistry, who are interested in space, but they don't see themselves. Like the internships are hard to find. A lot of aerospace-based internships, they expect you to be an engineer. And so I'm curious, how did you kind of navigate and get your foot in the door as someone who has an almost unconventional STEM degree in aerospace?
It's a really great question. And for those of y'all that are listening, I say that you really, really have to put yourself out there in the space where other people, where you want to be. If you see yourself here, Well, find those people that are there and surround yourself with them, because I'm telling you firsthand, I was welcomed in the aerospace industry with open arms. When I went to my first conference, I didn't have a good grasp on how rockets worked, and how engines were built, and people took the time to teach me. You just have to first be there, and then be brave enough to ask questions. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. And if you can do those two things, you'll be able to find your footing in the space industry. It's very inclusive and supportive for sure.
Yeah, that's such powerful advice and something I can relate with as well. If you just reach out to people and you're like, hey, I really want to do this, or hey, I want to learn about this, the space industry is one of the most welcoming communities, in my opinion, because everyone is so passionate about what they do that they're ready to help, they're ready to pass it along, they're ready to provide that knowledge and advice that they needed when they were kind of navigating the space when they were younger as well. So I think that's such powerful advice and something I will definitely echo. Just reach out because people are ready to support you and help you as long as you're not afraid of being uh, rejected or you're afraid of being judged for something. So I think, powerful. That's definitely powerful advice that I'll echo as well. And,
And one thing that I'd like, oh, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to add one thing, because I think it's a lot of times you'll hear this advice: go be there, go be present, show up. But then, the question that I always had and have still, even still, because I feel like I need to be super prepared in order to talk to a certain individual that I want answers from. And the answer is yes, be as prepared as you can, and try to understand your question well enough where you can ask subsequent questions, or rephrase it, but you don't have to know the answers. And I think that's really, really important. You don't have to have enough data and to prove yourself when talking to somebody. And I can't stress that enough. If you go and tell somebody, I'm really, really, really fascinated with engine testing, and I really want to talk to a design engineer at I don't know, SpaceX or something like that. You would just go and ask somebody, and then it'll cascade into that. And then you just have to know why you're interested. You don't have to know all the steps in between. Other people will help you with that.
Yeah. And I think that's such powerful advice because a lot of times, especially as a young professional or a young student, you are nervous to talk to someone who's way more experienced than you because you don't think you can understand what they're saying, or you're going to be judged for not knowing a certain topic, or even not even as a student, even as an adult who's interested in transitioning into the space sector, you feel inferior. And I think it's so important to realize that people are ready to teach and ready to give knowledge, and no one's going to judge you because we're all here to learn and grow together. And you have something or you have knowledge that another person might not necessarily know. So I think it's always important to just put yourself in those uncomfortable situations so that you can grow as an individual and really do what you love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when I mentioned this at the intro as well, but when I first met you at the NewSpace conference, I was really, really blown away with your enthusiasm and how kind and open you are to really everyone just to talk about space, to talk about what you love doing. And that really echoed when I met you again like 2 weeks ago at Space Prizes reception. You just have like a really contagious energy, and I think that stems from the fact that you love space so much and space exploration, and it's very like contagious to feel that. And so I'm curious to learn about what inspired you to enter the space industry, and really what was that aha moment that ignited your, really contagious energy and love for the space sector? Could you share what that aha moment was for you?
Yes, absolutely. And the aha moment for me was that inclusivity, that welcoming feeling, and feeling like I was a kid in a candy store. I had asked all these questions, and it's really cool stuff. It's cool. It's for me as a scientist and engineer, I think about it from a point of creativity. Well, we have this environment that can be explored if we keep pushing forward and planning and implementing, and I want to see what happens. That excites me, and the fact that there's an environment and a supportive ecosystem of folks to really allow that. I couldn't help myself. This is a moment in history, and I know that for the space industry, we're going to build on the moon in our lifetime for sure. And I'm excited for that. I'm so excited. So people enticed me into the space industry to know that it's a unifying vector to bring people from different backgrounds to solve the technology and the excitement of tackling those huge challenges in an environment we don't know that well. That's super cool. So I'm all for it.
And I love how you were able to, take that energy, you're able to take that, connecting with people and learning about space and then embrace it and feel confident, be like, hey, you know what? This excites me. I'm going to follow it. There are not a lot of people who step out of their degree major and do something that's not directly related to their field of work. Like usually you don't see a biomedical engineer working for the space sector just because it's not directly correlated. Usually an aerospace engineer would be working at a space company. And so the fact that you really took that kind of energy, that really positive energy you felt from space, and you confidently pursued that path, stepping out of your comfort zone, stepping away from Regeneron, I think is, a really bold move, but also something that I think a lot of people should do. You really followed your passion and you followed your energy and where it was taking you. And that's really commendable that you did that and really followed your heart.
Thank you so much. I think to paint the picture a little bit clearer, I in terms of Regeneron and pharmaceuticals and medicine in general, space medicine was and is my goal. But I saw this gap in the industry, and I saw where we're going. We're going to the moon, and building towards going to Mars, and colonizing it, building a base. And how do you do that in a way that represents everyone? I live in New York, you live in New York. The diversity there is amazing. I
Amazing.
mean, the creativity is unbelievable. It really truly is. And I saw that and I said, well, this is the need now. We need people in the industry from all walks of life and different backgrounds to start solving these challenges. And so that's why I pivoted a little bit and I said, okay, I'm going to tackle the problem that's a need right now, and then see where it takes me. But I want to inspire and help people do what I did, but in a path that's a little bit less unknown, because it's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing for me to do, for sure.
And I think it's incredible that and very inspiring that you saw this gap. And even if your ultimate goal is to go into space medicine and, love space medicine, huge fan.
Right.
I think
I
that we
know you
really
do. I
bond
had
over
to bring
that.
it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you also saw that gap, especially in DEI, which is still, surprisingly, we've come a long way, but still a consistent problem in the space industry. You saw that gap.
Right.
And living in New York City, there is blooming talent with all sorts of skill sets that are not in the space industry that could be so valuable. And so you saw that gap and you're really following your heart with it. And Kim is an incredible, visionary leader in the space industry. And
Absolutely.
so really working with her and starting this initiative and doing Stardust, I think is incredible. It's going to change a lot of lives. I'm really excited to meet that first cohort and to see how it goes with them because I am just hearing about the work you're doing. I'm so excited to see the impact it will have on their lives.
Yeah, you and me both. Kimmy and I were doing a meeting at one of our go-to spots, Lupe's, and we were talking about, you know, who is that person 5 years down the line, and just meeting the future of them. It's really going to be a really special moment. I can't even. I'm shook now, just excited, envisioning it. So I'm excited to work with Kim and make it happen, and work with, everybody else along the way that wants to help us build towards this mission for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, when I talked, I remember interviewing an individual who said that he changed his career midway. So he was actually a physician, and he changed his career 40 years later, and he was like, I want to go into space industry. But that was a huge change for him. And I've talked with a lot of adults who are like, I hate my job, I hate what I'm doing, I wish I could change. And I'm like, why don't you
Yeah.
change? It's because people are afraid of changing in midway of their career. And even
Yes.
sometimes adults who, people who've went to prison, or people who had, drug abuse, and who are recovering from drug abuse, a lot of people don't have an opportunity for a second chance, or they don't think they have an opportunity for a second chance, or society doesn't give them a chance. And so the fact that Stardust is really focusing on uplifting these really diverse talents we tend to overlook, because we're really focused on inspiring the next generation, but also we forget to inspire the generation that's already there. And so I think that's such a powerful movement. And yeah, very excited to see the first cohort and to see the impact it'll have for them 5, 10 years down the line, and the change that they will bring to the industry. And in this journey, for particularly you as well, kind of going from Regeneron to finding your place in the space sector, getting your foot in the door, to hopefully going into space medicine, did you have any obstacles in your journey so far? And if so, how were you able to overcome these obstacles?
That's a really good question. I'd have to answer with, you know, do, uh, every day comes with challenges. I mean, I'm a person just like anybody else, and it's, you're faced with challenges. I like to think of life as just waves. Sometimes you're on top, sometimes you're on bottom, sometimes you're waiting to catch the next one. And if you can be open-minded, I really approach things with an open mind, and failure, is really just something that if I can check my ego at the door, I can learn from for sure. And that's what I try to do. And that calibration technique that I use every single day with my affirmation, celebrating my success, that's really helpful. And, I run, that helps me too. Just clear my mind. And also I do some other fun creative things. I love listening to jazz. Something about jazz just really does it for me. It really untangles my mind and helps me think clear. And comedy, maybe it's the endorphins. I don't know. You tell me, get a cut.
Yeah, and I think it's just like the fact that you found those comforting actions that make you feel better, from jazz music to
Um,
comedy, and finding those places where you could kind of recover and make sure that you are still taking care of yourself in times of hardship, I think is so important. And I love the metaphor you used of like it's a wave. Sometimes you're at your high, sometimes you're at really low, or sometimes you're just kind of waiting for that next momentum to kind of push you forward. And I've never heard of that one before, and I think it's such a good way to think about life. Not everything is going to be like a high upwards wave. Like you got to come down at some point, but when you come
yeah,
down, you learn a lot more that makes you go higher. And so, sometimes the low points are something that'll help you become or go even higher in the future. So incredible way to think about it.
absolutely. Thank
And
you.
now that,
Thank
yeah,
you.
and now that we're able to learn a little bit about your journey, and the work you're doing, as well as kind of your future, your insight into life as well. One of the questions I had for you is, you've had many experiences in the space sector through this journey of yours, and so you must have come across a lot of really cool people, talked with really cool individuals in space, and have some really cool insights about the future of the industry as well. So I'm curious to hear, what makes you excited and what makes you nervous for the future of the space industry? That's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah, this one really hits end to end. It's great. It's really great. I thought long and hard about it, and I always try to stay really really true to myself. And really people drive me, and so I'm excited to see, I mean, what I've already seen, but in the mass, as people come together from external industries, different sectors, to really come help build the infrastructure and the foundations we need to keep growing this really fledgling economy that we're trying to kickstart, but also in when focusing on regulations and doing things in a sustainable way, and that really pivots me into what I'm concerned about it. I think looking at it and ensuring we're grounded enough and humble to know that Mother Nature is a force in itself, and we're in an environment that's very, very costly when we're talking about space and sending anything to outer space. So focusing on sustainable initiatives, closed loop systems, making sure that what we put out there, we have a plan to recycle it and put it to use in either other ways or decommission it properly in a safe way, and making sure that we leave space for future generations to also innovate, right? I think it's an important thing we've learned in the past few years, and we've learned throughout history that oftentimes we're reactive, but we can use engineering principles and be incrementalists to really be proactive, and that will only shine back down to our life here on Earth and help us, just people live better lives. I mean, isn't that what we all want?
Yeah, and we've learned so much about how we've honestly, treated Earth as a planet and how we're trying to recover from those mistakes we made. And so hopefully we can be more proactive so we don't make those same mistakes. We've already made a few mistakes with space debris, and we're starting to kind of take
Yeah.
a step back. And, ESA and a lot of other space agencies are starting to take action to clearing that space debris, or coming up with new missions that will address those concerns. But we also need to make sure as we continue to hopefully go send humans to the moon, can't wait to see that happen again, as well as seeing, potential humans go to Mars. I think there's a lot of things and a lot of missions that are going to happen for us to get there. And in that process, we have to make sure we're doing that in a sustainable way where we're leaving a footprint, but not one that's dangerous and will harm us from being able to really protect nature, protect space, and the beauty of space. So I think that's a really great point. And my last and final question for you is what final piece of advice, you've given plenty of advice throughout this interview, strategies you've used to, recover from failures, as well as, strategies to be able to make sure you're taking care of yourself on a daily basis, regardless of how much you have to do. But I want to ask you one final question of what's the final piece of advice you would give to a young student regarding their pursuit of a passion in STEM, aerospace, really just any career, a piece of advice you would give your younger self. You're already very young, but if you could time travel and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that advice be?
So the advice would really be to keep following a path that makes you feel like yourself. And I'll boil that down so it's not an ambiguous statement, and create kind of like a stepwise guide for it. First, if you oftentimes in my life, I was always really bold and confident, from a really young kid, asking lots of questions. But going throughout the schooling system, I faced different challenges of, basically like, this is your lane, or, leave room for others to ask questions and things like that. And I think, I tried to fit in at certain times, but I just felt like I needed to not be in that mold, because it was somebody else's mold and I knew what I wanted. But I was still kind of figuring it out. I was young. So I would say that if it doesn't feel right, make a change. And that fear that you touched on earlier, that people often get stuck in that whirlpool. And oftentimes it's not their fault, right? Because they have other responsibilities and they need support. But to surround yourself with people that can support you so you can make that change, like, that's crucial, because you got to make that change. You only get so many trips around the sun, you might as well enjoy them. And to look at it from a point of whether you have a passion for STEM, whether you have a passion for the arts, or whatever it is, find it, and that'll be the best you, and the best you can do for the community. So lead with a child mind, and don't ever lose that. Don't ever let that get stomped out. And then just be brave. Be brave, and sometimes it'll be really hard, but at the end of the day, you'll feel good being you. I feel really great that I made this decision, and sometimes it's such a big void that you just have so many questions. But to ground yourself in the fact that you're following what your purpose is, that's the best you can do, and that's the best advice that I can give, really, really.
Yeah, and I know that's a piece of advice I will truly take to heart as well. Sometimes you just have to follow your gut. You have to just be bold. You have to do what you want to do, say what you want to say. And if you've got that little tingly feeling that, hey,
Mhm.
this is not the right path for you, then don't take
Yeah,
it, follow that heart because sometimes your gut is right and it'll tell you the right thing of what you need to do, what your next step should be. And I think trusting your inner voice can be difficult for many, but it's something that we need to start embracing. And even as a young student
yeah,
myself, I hear like multiple voices, like, do this, do that. And then you have a
yeah.
gut feeling that you tend to not follow. And I think just sometimes if you just take those risks and you just follow it, then the outcome is 100 times better. And so really, I appreciate hearing that advice. It just instills a little bit of newfound confidence in me to really just believe in myself and not just let those other voices dictate kind of what I want to do in the future. And just to
Right,
like let
right.
let that heart take me where I want to go. So I really appreciate that advice, and I know I will take it to heart, and I'm sure everyone who's listening will as well. So thank you so much, Michelle, for taking your time to do this. I know we wanted to do this for a long time, so I'm finally glad we got a
Oh God.
chance to do this, and I'm very excited to hopefully meet you in person again. I love spending time with you. You have such an incredible energy. And so I'm really excited to see Stardust take off and to see all of the change and impact it will create on many lives. And really thank you for all you're doing to really inspire everyone in the space sector with your passion.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been such a pleasure, and if I can just leave your wonderful audience with all of your hard work that you've been able to capture, with one thing is, reach out. If you don't find anybody else, I want you to know you can reach out to me, and I would love to help you. That's what Stardust is all about, is looking at you and helping you see yourself in the space industry and providing you those technical tools, and resources and supportive ecosystem to help you thrive. So please feel free to reach out. I'd love, maybe I can give my information. My email is michelle@gostardust.com. Feel free to email me anytime or find me on LinkedIn. My name is Michelle Del Valle, and it would be an honor and a pleasure to meet each and every one of y'all. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I will leave your contact information down below so that everyone can reach out to you. And, sometimes it's just a message and it goes a long way. So thank you for making your information public for everyone. And I'll put that down below so people can reach out to you with questions. Thank you.
Cool.